Hello there, welcome back to my channel. Spring is approaching and it's time to wrap up the winter reading season. Today we're going to talk about my reading mood over the past few months, what I've read this winter, and what I'm currently reading moving into March. So grab your fika and let's talk about fiction. Okay, so how's my reading mood been this winter? Well, so there's usually a shift from December into January. And I tend to read less at the start of the year. I don't know what it is. While December is kind of a bigger reading month. But then, as spring approaches, it picks up. And on top of that, it's just been a lot of work stuff, so not much time. But hey, let's talk about the books I've read. Since I talked about them in my yearly wrap-up, I'm gonna keep December fairly brief, and then we'll dive more into what I've read in January and February. But hey, I finished Wicked, which I read mostly for the month of November. There was some big surprises, and if you're reading this expecting the Wicked musical, you're gonna get a surprise as well. I knew going into this that was gonna be different, but it was still a lot of things that I were a little bit shocked about. This hockey romance surprised me though. I was hesitant to read a hockey romance at all because I had some, I thought they were gonna be a lot of testosterone-y bullshit, but I kind of like this. I also think that it picks up on some themes that connect with me, so it might be that. This though, info from Repan by Bianca Kronlöf, was one of my most anticipated releases last year, and I think that my expectations might have been too high. Still liked it, but yeah, you know what I mean. It happens. Then I read Good Spirits by B.K. Borison, and I don't know why I try to read holiday romances, because I tend to not like them. It feels like they're pushing the holiday down your throat a little bit, and maybe that's the point, I don't know, but I tried. I don't know. It looks cute though. Ready Player One by Ernest, Cline. This and the hockey romance Unsteady were part of a little genre experiment that I did. I had never read a hockey romance and I had never read a gaming lit book before. So that's why I did. You can check it out on my channel. But I don't know. I thought that I was gonna like this more than the hockey romance. Some of this really tickled what I like about playing a game. The suspense and the thrill when you get closer and closer. It also felt like it was leaning heavily on nostalgia and maybe didn't have that much more. Lastly, I read Different Seasons by Stephen King, the latest in my Stephen King journey. This contains 4 novellas, including the one that inspired Shawshank Redemption and also the one that inspired Stand By Me called The Body. And I have to say that that was one of the best coming of age stories that I've read, I think. I really enjoyed it. I still think about it 2 months later. That was a quick wrap up of my December reads. Now, I read 6 books in December. That is more than my total for January and February. But hey, as I said, it tends to be a little bit slower for me at the start of the year. But I started off this year with The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I did this for my ongoing genre project where I've assigned a genre to every month of the year, and then I'll pick a book from that genre and read that and vlog it for every month. So in January it was coming of age, and this just felt like such a cornerstone, I don't know, to modern coming of age stories that I just had to read it. And it really had something, and it got me thinking about a lot of things, which is in itself a good thing. I'm not sure if I fully connected to it. Even though it's kind of short, it took me a long time to get through it, longer than I anticipated. Maybe this is one that you just have to read it and see for yourself, and that it can spark a lot of debate. I don't know. I'm curious if you've read it, what you thought about it. And if you want to check out my genre vlogs, the coming of age and historical fiction ones are up on my channel now. Okay, so let me just say, like in January and February, I feel like I've read a lot for the content that I'm putting out. And that has been a bit of a shift for me. And there's just been a lot of that. I'm not really sure how I feel about that at the moment, because I do want to read those books, but there's also books that I've been putting on hold that I felt an urge to read for a while now. The jury's still out on that one. Because the next book that I read was A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which I did a book to screen for, including just the first episode of the show. And now when the first season has concluded, I just want to say that I loved this adaptation. It was so great, and a lot of things that I talked about after the first episode was just a continuation throughout the season. How it wasn't as grand as what we've seen in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, but more about the common man, this hedge knight, and the dialogue between Dunk and Egg was some of my favorite parts of the season. It's just very heartwarming, interesting, funny, and just different, but it still feels like Westeros, which I really, really love. And I just loved revisiting these novellas, and I can't wait for the next season. It's going to be so interesting. I feel that they made a faithful adaptation whilst also bringing even more life to it. Have you watched the entire season? What did you think? So the only book that I have read, just because I felt like it and nothing else, was Atomic Noodle by Annalee Newitz. And I really like this. It's short and sweet and just a cozy sci-fi that I really haven't encountered before. It's about robots making noodles for the people of San Francisco after a devastating war. They also contain so much about rights and identity, and I really, really liked it. Now we're moving towards February, because this book I read in January, but I finished it in February. I read it for another book to screen, which I read for the new Bridgerton season, and that is An Offer from a Gentleman. Now, I don't know. This is the third time that I'm reading this book. I think the Bridgerton books offered me an escapism when I really, really needed them. And now I feel like I'm not connecting with them as much. Was a little bit surprised about that, but hey, we evolve as readers, as people, and yeah. There are parts of this I really like, and this is my favorite novel of the 8, and I really, really enjoyed this season. I thought it was charming, warm, and just gave something a little bit different than the first 3 seasons when it comes to the main couple. I don't know what it was. Maybe like a little more caring and a little more warmth early on. Maybe that was the difference. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, and if you've seen it, I want to hear all your thoughts. So lastly, in February, I read All the Light We Cannot See. This was for my second genre vlog, where I tackle historical fiction, and I don't tend to read a lot of World War II historical fiction. I've avoided that in the past. I had this at home, and I really didn't want to avoid it anymore. So I tried it out, and now I feel like I want to explore historical fiction even more, not just the eras and time periods where I've been most comfortable in the past, and also maybe move outside of Europe a little bit. So if you have any suggestions there, please leave them in the comments. That wraps up all the books I read in the winter months. I feel like I've had some fun reads. There have been some rereads, some surprises, but also some disappointment. But hey, isn't that always the case? But before we move on to what I'm currently reading, I'm curious, how would you summarize your winter reading season? Did you have any great reads between December and February? Okay, so I said I wanted to move a little bit outside of Europe with my historical fiction. It is set in India, and that is The God of Small Things. Now, this was gifted to me by someone who really enjoyed this book, so I'm kind of diving in blind, and it seems to evolve around a family drama. I haven't read that much yet. And sort of like a family dynamic that seems hard to navigate. I'll just have to read and see. So that's kind of exciting. I usually don't go in blind that often. I kind of like knowing, but actually it's kind of fun. The next one is Broken Country, which I got out of the library. I'm buddy reading this with a friend. There seems to be a lot of drama in this one as well. This follows Beth, and she's happily married to her husband Frank, and then one day her teenage love Gabriel comes back to the village. This is not linear storytelling. Beth tells the story of when Gabriel comes back, but also their past. And we also get glimpses of the future, and there's clearly something has happened. And I guess that's what we're going to find out. I'm going to start the Bandit Queens pretty soon for my next genre vlog for March. And I'm pretty excited for that one as well. Let me know what you're currently reading, and don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.